to the Workforce Connections podcast, where we discuss workforce development in Southern Nevada. Here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the WC podcast. Today, we have a really special guest. Many of you know her already. I'm honored to call her my friend. She's been a representative for all of us for many years in many positions, which we'll talk about today, but former US Congresswoman representing the great state of Nevada and many other roles. Shelley, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to see you.
We're excited to see you as well. I know that, again, those of us who've had the fortune to know you know about all these things, but we want to tell our listeners, our viewers about all the ways you've contributed to our great state. But let's begin with the beginnings. I might be missing some of these spaces as well. Tell us where you were born, where you grew up, went to high school, college, and perhaps your first job after college.
Oh, heavens. Okay. As you know, I'm the granddaughter of immigrants to this country that couldn't speak English. They came to the United States in order to escape the Holocaust. And so I grew up hearing stories from my grandmothers. I never knew my grandfathers about what life was like where they came from and what their hopes and dreams were coming to the United States. So for me, public service has always been my way of giving back to this country for not only taking my family in, which our country did, and giving us a chance to survive, which they did, but we've been able to thrive here in the United States. When my grandparents got here, they couldn't speak English. They spoke Ladino, which was a combination of Spanish and Yiddish because they were Spanish Jews. And so neither one of my parents graduated high school. They had to go to work in order to support their brothers and sisters and widowed mothers. But in our family, it didn't matter if you were pretty or popular. It mattered that you got good grades in school so you could make something of yourself. So I'm actually the first person in my family not only to graduate high school, but to go on to college. Now, I was born in New York. My parents, when they got married, moved in with my mother's mother, my grandmother. And I was born while they were living in my grandmother's apartment. When I was 12 years old, my father was a waiter when I was growing up. He was having a very hard time making a living. And so one night, he put my sister and I and the dog in the back seat of our car, parents in the front seat. Everything we owned was in a U-Haul hooked up to the back bumper. Drove across country, middle of the summer, no air conditioning. I really thought, oh my God, where are we going? My dad had a letter of recommendation to get a job as a waiter in Southern California. So we drove the old Route 66. When we got to Hoover Dam, there were signs, Las Vegas 30 miles. I'm sure the same signs are there now. And so my parents, who I thought were so old, they were 31 and 34 at the time, they wanted to see Las Vegas. And my dad didn't have a job. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. My sister and I didn't have to be in school because it was summertime. As far as we knew, the dog had no plans. And so we decided to stop in Vegas for the night. And we never left. We've been here now over 60 years. And we made a life for ourselves in the middle of the desert. I cried for as soon as we got here, I thought my parents took me to hell. I really did. It was awful. It was so hot and miserable. And I missed my friends in upstate New York. And then I started school at Jon C. Fremont. And I never looked back. This has been a remarkable place to grow up. And I always say it's not that I grew up in Las Vegas. I grew up with Las Vegas because when we first moved here, there were 80,000 people in the entire Las Vegas Valley. Now, as you know, there's 2.5 million in the same geographic area. So I've seen extraordinary growth and development. After Jon C. Fremont, I went to Valley. I'm part of the first graduating class at Valley High School. And I went on to UNLV. As I've said, it might as well have been Harvard for me. It changed my life and the trajectory of my family as well. And then I went to law school. Always knew I was going to come back to Las Vegas and do public service and start running for office. As I said earlier, it's my way. Public service is my way of giving something back to this country. If I was a great singer, I'd be singing. If I was a great artist, I would be creating art. I'm not any of that, but I am a good, solid public servant, and I like helping people and being able to use my office to improve the quality of other people's lives.
Yeah, and you've done that, Shelley, in many roles, which we'll talk about next. What a wonderful story of like me, a transplant to Las Vegas. I wasn't born here either, but I arrived in 1987. There was more than 80,000, but like you, I've seen an evolution, and I've seen your career as well. And again, feel fortunate to have worked with you in your office. But let's talk about for a second before we move to the next roles. I'm going to rewind a little bit to that UNLV. It's always a treat to have lunch or share a meal with you because you have tons of stories, interesting stories. One of them that I'll never forget is the one where you share with me that not only were you the student body president in those years at UNLV as a young, ambitious young woman who knew one day represent us in Congress, but you also told me not many people know that you also did dual duty and also performed as the mascot.
I was the school mascot at UNLV. I was very active in those early days with one of the sororities at UNLV, Delta Zeta. By the way, they're no longer on campus, but in those days, they were the cheerleaders mostly. And they were looking for a school mascot, and I happened to fit the uniform, so I became the school mascot. And these were in the early days of UNLV, and so there was a lot of fun and enjoyed every minute of it.
That's awesome. So Shelley, as we move forward now in the years, I know you've held multiple offices, but I believe one of the first ones was the Nevada legislature.
Yes.
Because here also, as you know, my colleague, your friend, Irene Bustamante Adams served there. Current Councilwoman Olivia Diaz, it's on our local elected officials. They're all former assembly folks. And so tell us about those years. I think they were different. If I remember hearing from Dina Titus, Bob Beers, years ago, even though there was always two parties, there was more common to find common ground back there in those years. Tell us a little bit about how it was different than today.
It's I noticed it in Congress in particular. As time went on, things became more and more partisan. When I served in the legislature, and I had just given birth to my son Max. I think you know Max.
Yes.
And so I campaigned when I was pregnant.
Wow.
And I had Max, and then I won the election, and Max and I started going back and forth to Carson City. And it was a more cordial environment, but where I noticed things really becoming partisan, and again, not even thinking about what's good for the state or good for the country, was when I was serving in Congress. And when I first got to Congress, I joined the Center Aisle Caucus. What that is the people that moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats belong to this organization or this caucus, and we worked together for the good of the country. And it didn't matter who was president. Once a month, we met for dinner, and we'd have a cabinet member come and talk to us. And it created not only a bit of camaraderie, but you were able to work across the aisle. By the time there were about 140 of us in this Center Aisle Caucus when I started. By the time I finished in Congress 7 terms later, there were only 2 of us left. I was the Democrat, and a woman named Joanne Emerson from Illinois, a congresswoman from Illinois, was the Republican. And we looked at each other one day and just disbanded. There was no reason to keep meeting like that. And I thought, how unfortunate for the country.
Yeah.
And it became a rarity. I think when Joe Hecht was a congressman from Nevada, whenever there was something that had to do with the military, because he was military, I would walk across the aisle and talk to him. So I get a pretty good idea of what what I should do insofar as the vote is concerned. But that was, even back then, it was getting a little tenuous to do that.
And our country could use so much more of that today,
You know, one of the reasons I love running for mayor and believe I will love serving as mayor is that it's a nonpartisan position. And I've said this, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you need a pothole fixed, you want someone that can get that job done. And I pride myself on getting the job done. And so to me, it doesn't matter. And I like the idea of just the nonpartisan nature of being mayor. You represent everybody, no matter what their point of view is. You're there to serve them.
Another role, Shelley, that I know you got the job done even before you went to Congress was the Nevada State System of Higher Education.
Yes.
You were on the Board of Regents. So
I was.
tell us about your memories of those years and maybe some of the things you are proud of, the accomplishment.
Well, I loved serving on the Board of Regents. It was a challenging time. I don't know of a time that isn't challenging, but that was during the Maxim Tarkanian controversy. And so I became an expert on NC2A rules and regulations. And honest to goodness, when people would call me, I'm coming into Vegas next week. Can you get me a ticket? It used to be to Streisand, to Sinatra, to Wayne Newton. No, can you get me a ticket to the UNLV basketball game?
Gucci Road.
And they wanted to sit on the bench with the players.
Yeah.
What are you, out of your mind? But that was the hottest ticket in time, hottest ticket to get in those days, and it was very exciting for the community. So I served during the good times and the not so good times on the Board of Regents. But we worked very hard to keep tuition low, and nobody understood that better than I. My parents were very encouraging about education and me going to college, but they didn't have any money. I mean, my dad was a waiter, so it was dependent upon me. You want to go to college? Well, there's summer times and after school times to be working. And so I knew how difficult it was to be able to afford to go to school. And I think I'm a great believer that democracy is dependent on a well-educated electorate. So we all do well if we have an educated electorate to make informed decisions, not only about their own life and be able to support their families, but able to support our democracy as well. And I don't think people realize how tenuous this is. You know, you have to work on democracy.
Yes.
And the other thing that I'm most proud of is I helped bring the law school to UNLV. And I love that. I'll tell you this story. So when I was student body president, before I graduated and went to law school, they put me on a committee to explore the feasibility of bringing a law school to UNLV. And I served on that committee during my senior year, graduated, left. 20 years later, when I was on the Board of Regents, they put me on the same committee. Nothing had been done. Wow. And so I vowed that I would not leave the Board of Regents until we had a law school here at UNLV. Wow. And my the other members of the Board of Regents were gracious enough to allow me to make the motion to approve a law school being built here. And what I love about that is many years later, my son Max, who we talked about, graduated from the Boyd School of Law. So I didn't want the law school for Max, but I'm awfully glad that it was an option for him to stay home and go to law school.
Yeah, and it's made our community so much better now with the Sam Boyd Law School. And again, as you say, you didn't get to graduate there. You had to go to another school to become an attorney. And before, again, leaving for Congress, you worked as an attorney, not only at the Nevada State Commerce Department, but also in the private sector, having worked as an attorney for Southwest Gas Corporation and Sands Gaming. Tell us about that period of your life before Congress where you spent working as an attorney.
Well, you know, I split my time between being in office and making a living. And so my first job out of law school, I was appointed by Governor Mike O'Callaghan to be deputy director of the state commerce department. And that was overseeing banking, savings and loan, mortgage companies, credit unions, and financial institutions in town. So one of the things, and this just was an unintended consequence, is I got a very good background on the financial institutions, which has served me well over the years when I've held other jobs or other offices. And then I applied to be in-house counsel for Southwest Gas Corporation. Loved it. That it was a lovely company to work for, and I left when I decided to run for the Nevada State Assembly and was very, very pregnant with my son. And so I left Southwest Gas, although now, and because of that, I've got a very good understanding of energy law. And I think that's important too, especially now energy is so important and moving to renewable energy sources. So that was a good opportunity for me. And then I served in the Nevada State Legislature, but I always worked for a living. And so during, in between offices, I held a number of really important, not important like big shot important, but important because they gave me an opportunity to learn. And of course, gaming is our major industry in the state of Nevada. And I was the vice president of government and legal affairs at the Old Sands Hotel. And that was a lot of fun. I mean, every day was an adventure going to work.
Yeah, so that rich past, as you said, really equipped you with the meaningful experiences to do the best job you could in your next stage, which was, again, the U.S. House of Representatives, one of the most highest offices in our land, representing our great state. Again, you were a member from 1999 to 2013, first woman to serve in the district, held the office for 7 terms. That's a long time, but what are some of the things that you're proudest of in that time that you were there?
Well, my proudest accomplishment when I was serving in the United States Congress was bringing the extraordinarily fabulous VA hospital to Southern Nevada. And that came, and I'm such a believer in this. You hear elected officials talking about transparency, and we lived it in my congressional office and reached out to the community. We set up a number of advisory committees just to keep in touch with what was happening on the ground. Because no matter how great my staff was, and they were, and you knew most of my staff members, very committed to the community, the fact is you can't be in all places all the time. So the way the VA hospital came about is I had a veterans advisory committee and a group of lady veterans. We had men and women veterans, and these were older women. They had served in Korea in World War II. They came over to me during one of our Veterans Affairs Committee advisory meetings, and they said, we need a mammogram machine. They said, we go to, in those days, we had a clinic, Adelaide Delhi Clinic on MLK and Martin Luther King Drive. And they had to go there to see a doctor. And then the doctor would tell them they needed to go get a mammogram. So they'd have to find transportation to the doctor or the facility to get the mammogram. Then they had to go back to the VA clinic to sit down with the doctor. And they said, if we had a mammogram machine in the clinic, that would save us time, it would save us money, and we would really appreciate it. So I rolled up my sleeves along with my staff, and we were able to get a mammogram machine for the Adelaide Delhi medical clinic, VA clinic. When we were doing the ribbon cutting, and it was the cutest mammogram machine, it was pink, it was great, and I've got a great picture of all of us cutting the ribbon. But when I was on the podium talking about what a great thing this is, and next time we're going to get an MRI machine, and somebody came over to me after I finished my remarks. They said, "You got to think bigger." Bigger than an MRI machine? It takes up half the room. They said, we need a hospital here. You've got over 200,000 veterans that call Southern Nevada home, and if they get sick, they got to go to Long Beach. And how difficult is that? If you're sick and ailing, you have to go away from medical services. You're away from your family. And we started thinking about that. And I said, you're right. We need a full service VA hospital right here in Southern Nevada for our Nevada veterans. And we worked very hard. It was a major priority for my staff. And it finally became a reality.
Got it done.
And I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud of during my service in Congress, is we really did something very important for the community and for my veterans.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing, Shelley. I know that there's many others, but I know that Irene's, she told me, shared with me that her husband, Brad, worked at that VA hospital. And so for it to be a reality again is a huge thing for all the reasons you mentioned. So thank you. I know that's only one example of the many things you're proud of in your years in Congress.
It was a very special thing. And I remember one of the contractors, when it was getting built, one of the contractors invited me to go to the site to see what they had accomplished. And I remember it was just one of those days. It was drizzling. It was around, I think, Thanksgiving break. And so it's drizzling. It's a little chilly. I go over in the rain, and they're walking me around this building, and I'm thinking, this is so disappointing. I said, it seems awfully small. And the contractor said, Congresswoman, this is the power plant for the hospital. This isn't the hospital. I said, oh my goodness. It turned out that the hospital is magnificent. But I thought for a minute that the power plant building was the whole hospital.
Sure.
And then no. And I thought, oh, thank heavens, because I worked so hard for this. But people don't realize it was the single largest budget item in the 2006 federal budget. And that was to build that building.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something else, Jaime, and you'll know why this pains me a bit. I was able to get the funding to build that hospital when we had a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House, and a Republican Secretary of the VA.
Wow.
But I'm not sure they could get that accomplished today. It's such a partisan atmosphere. But we were able to demonstrate the need of our veterans here, and it was very, very well supported. Don't think that could happen now, and that's a shame.
Yeah, and I think that speaks a lot about you, Shelley, how those of us who know you are a bridge maker, a bridge builder, a consensus maker. You do bring people together in a convener. So that's an example.
I think it is. And I always used to talk about myself as being a buffer and a bridge. I was a buffer to protect my fellow citizens from the federal government and any abuses that were taking place. And I was a bridge to the federal government so that I could present the positions that my constituents had in Congress. And so buffer and bridge is a good, I think, a good example of what I tried to accomplish when I was in Congress.
I like it. When you, of course, came back, one of the things I also enjoyed in your most recent professional journey, your time at Touro. Again, Jerry and Irene went to have lunch with you. You know, we left and went to PF Chang's, but you showed us the campus. I know you were enjoying it a lot. What is your maybe favorite memory of your time at Touro?
Well, we turned a sleepy, and I had a great leadership team too. I just seemed to have the good fortune of attracting quality and talented staff. And so I had a great leadership team at Touro, but we took a sleepy little campus that nobody ever heard of and turned it into the premier medical school in the state of Nevada. It is the largest medical school, graduates 180 future doctors every year. And I was very, very proud of that. In addition to that, our physician assistant program, nurse practitioner program, physical therapy and occupational therapy. And Touro initiated these programs when there weren't anything like it here in Southern Nevada. So it all worked out beautifully. The building is magnificent. The research lab is state of the art, funded by the Engelstad Foundation. We have the only certified, I'm not involved anymore, but I feel like I have an ownership interest in this. But a dear friend of mine donated a considerable amount of money to create the only certified simulation center in the entire state of Nevada is at Touro University. And it has the state-of-the-art mannequins. They cry, they have heart attacks, they give birth, they bleed, you name it. So my students are having on-the-job training while they're still in school. So when they get to the hospital and they're doing their residencies, there isn't much they haven't experienced already at school, and that's terrific. And the one thing, I'm proud of all of these things, but right after October 1, I was reading our newspaper, reading the RJ and Son, and talking about, what had transpired. And of course, we never want to live through that again. But I was reading in the paper that the Engelstad Foundation had donated $8 million to Metro to create a disaster training program or a center, the building, and that part of that would be medical training. And I remember reading it and thinking, they don't need to do that. Touro can do that for them. So I contacted the now sheriff. He was under Sheriff Kevin McMahill. And I said, Kevin, I have an idea. Can you come to Touro? I'd like to give you a tour. And I gave him a tour and told him we could do your training because this is something I didn't know, although it makes sense. If there's an active shooting site, you can't have medical personnel on site. I mean, that makes sense. You don't want to put them at risk also. So if we could train all 4,000 Metro officers in disaster medical training, they come upon someone that's bleeding out, and in a matter of seconds, they can stop the bleed and other things like that. We could save lives. And so Kevin liked it. I called up the Engelstads, asked if they would mind, if they could fund it. They agreed to fund it. And to the best of my knowledge, Touro has trained all 4,000 officers. And I'll tell you a little postscript. I went to the memorial service at UNLV for the 3 faculty members that were killed in that senseless shooting on campus. There was a 4th that was critically wounded. The Metro officer that got to the wounded professor first had been trained at Touro, and he was able to save his life. And when I came on campus for the memorial service, first person I saw was Kevin McMahill, who came over to me and told me, "You saved a life." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's exactly what we were hoping would happen with that program. So those are the things that I was most proud of at Touro.
Yeah, wonderful story, Shelley. Thank you for sharing that with us. And that's going to continue to produce those kinds of results for many, many years. So,
God willing, yes.
And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about before we go maybe to your personal life is through your role at Touro. Of course, you served on the LVGEA.
Yes,
Las Vegas. Yes, with me, and that's why I enjoyed that too, because I got to, again, see even closer how you've always been an advocate, whether it be in the state assembly, the Board of Regents, Congress, the Department of Commerce. And even in the private sector, you've always understood the alignment of economic development and workforce development. You just explained it a second ago. So how much did you enjoy your time at the LVGA where you could spend talking about economic development and workforce development?
I loved it. As a matter of fact, it pained me when I left Touro to have to get off the board, but I served for almost 10 years. I love the gaming industry, and I know what they have contributed to our state. But I'm also a tremendous proponent of diversifying our economy. We absolutely have to. That means quality education, good technical training, workforce development, and that's exactly what the mission of the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance is. Our mission was to attract good businesses with high-paying jobs that are energy efficient and didn't waste water. And for the purposes of Southern Nevada, what could be more important than that? And so I regretted having to get off the board. But if I'm fortunate enough to win this mayor's race, I hope that I'll be back on the board because we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and I look forward to it because Tina is organizing a board retreat in the next couple of weeks. And of course, we'll miss you, but I want you to know that you've set the standard high for all of us. So we're going to keep pushing in that direction.
That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah, so that's coming up. But let's talk a little bit also about your personal life, because again, we could talk forever about all these. We've only drawn small examples of every stage of your life, but I know that balancing all that you had to do in your professional life with that personal was difficult. So your husband, Larry, your sons, Max and Sam, your two stepchildren, David and Stephanie, they're important in your life. I know they are. And so how do you set those healthy boundaries to make sure you are there? And also,
I know. Look, I think every working woman has that challenge. And I just had the additional, not only working and being a mother, but also holding office. But I think we're all bouncing a lot of balls in the air. And I have tremendous respect for women that are doing that. It is not easy. But I had a very supportive family. And when this is God's honest truth. When I had just turned 30 and I time to start a family, but I also wanted to run for office. And I remember having breakfast with my mother at the French bakery and telling her, I don't know what to do. I want to start running for office, but I want to start a family. And I think I was hoping that my mother would tell me which one to do. And then if it didn't work out, I could blame her also, what are mothers for? And so, she said to me at that breakfast, she said, do both and I'll help you. Wow. And I had both my mother and my mother-in-law in town at the time. And I did, in fact, get pregnant and have Max and win my first seat to the assembly in November. And so it's challenging. It always has been. It probably always will be for women. But I had this incredible desire to serve. And I thought if I wasn't happy and felt fulfilled, then how could my family feel fulfilled? Although I'll tell you one story. I'm sitting in my office in Congress. And I'm in the inner office, and there was a group, I think from Opportunity Village, if I'm not mistaken. So I had about 10 guests from home sitting in my office. And I always made a priority, if my children called, I didn't care if I was talking to the President of the United States, I was going to take their call. So I'm sitting there, and we're talking about Opportunity Village and what their needs were and on. And I look down at my phone, and it's my son, Max. And so I said to I said, do you mind if I take this call? This is my son. Of course, nobody minds. I said, don't leave. You don't have to leave. And I get on the phone. I said, Max, I'm in a meeting. Do you need to talk to me now or can I call you back? Of course, he said, call me back. And so we hang up and I look up and all of a sudden I went from being a congresswoman to being Mother Teresa. They all looked, oh, that's so sweet. And when somebody said, well, how old is your boy? And I said, well, he's 30. But doesn't matter. He's still still my boy.
Yeah.
And so family always came first, but I would be misrepresenting the facts if I didn't tell you that there were times that a lot of sacrifices were made in order for me to do the things that I was doing. And I know that, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I'm grateful too that your family was there, your mom, and your stepmom, to mother-in-law, to help with that stuff. What kind of hobbies or activities do you enjoy that have nothing to do with work or volunteering? Do you have something that makes you happy that you do in your off time?
We are. I tell everybody this because they say, "Why are you running for mayor? Why don't you just enjoy your life?" The reality is that my husband is obviously in his 70s, and he's still practicing medicine. We are working people. I'm not a golfer. I'm not a beach person. I like working. I get tremendous satisfaction from that. Somebody said, "Well, when do you plan to retire?" I said, "When my time comes, no matter what desk I'm sitting at, I'm going to put my head down, and that's going to be the end of it." And so I plan to work until I'm unable to work anymore. Whatever happens, I'm a voracious reader. I love reading. And when I was growing up, there was no money, but we always had books in the house. And I think that contributed to my lifelong love of reading. And so that's just having a couple of hours to sit on the couch and read a good book is just nirvana to me. My husband and I also we do a lot of movies when we can. They're not as good as they were prior to COVID, but still, when a good movie is in the theater, we love to go and have, just a quiet dinner, the two of us, at a local restaurant, and then go see a movie. That to me is wonderful.
Sounds like a good night out.
I know. And now, of course, I've got 4 grandchildren, and most Sunday nights, usually not during campaigning, but most Sunday nights we have family dinner. And we know how lucky and blessed we are, because so many of my friends have wonderful children all over the country. I have wonderful children right across the street. So it's nice to be able to watch my grandchildren grow up.
That is nice. I'm glad for you. I have one last question for you as we near the end of the podcast. I think that we have a lot of listeners that are probably our age, but we also have young listeners. We work with young people, and a lot of them probably, a young person might look at you and what a rich life, and yes, struggles, sacrifices, but you have represented again the people of Nevada and on Capitol Hill. Here in the state capitol, you've been in the private sector. You've enjoyed a rich life, and you're I'm among many who look up to you, are grateful to call you a friend, and for the service you've given our state. What advice would you give those young people that are listening now and couldn't imagine reaching what Shelley Berkley has? But I know you have some advice that you can give them.
They need to do it. There's always a million reasons why not to do something. And if you look at I know people see me now, and I'm an affluent woman. There's no doubt about it. I don't pretend to be anything else but that. I've worked very hard to get here, but we live a very comfortable life. But I didn't grow up that way. And so I understand what the challenges are when you come from a family and it's a broken family, there's no money, and you really have to struggle. Do it. Do it. You'll find a million reasons not to, but if you have a dream and you want to do something, the only person that can actually stand in your way is you. And this doesn't mean that you're. I existed when I was in college, and I worked at Al Phillips the cleaner. I was an Al Phillips the cleaner girl, for those that remember Al Phillips. And I worked at Taco Bell. You just do what you got to do. But if you have a goal, it makes it a lot easier. You're just doing what you have to do to get to your goal. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. There'll be naysayers and people that, for whatever reason or not, don't want you to succeed or can't even imagine your dream. But if it's your dream, you make it happen. And you have no one to blame but yourself if you don't. And that doesn't mean that I don't fully appreciate how challenging things are right now. It's tough out there. There's no doubt about it. And that's why what you do is so essential. It makes a difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of our fellow citizens.
Well, that's great advice, Shelley, coming from you. Again, thank you for always being a strong advocate for the work that we do on behalf of our community. It's always nice to see you. Thank you for being here today
Thank
with us.
you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we look forward to your next visit.
Thank you. I will after the election. How's that?
Sounds good. Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Good
Thank
to see you, Shelley, and thank you. Well, that's it for another episode of the WC Podcast. We hope to see you at the next one. Until then, stay safe. Thank you for staying over to do our bonus segment called Against the Wall. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The first segment is called Your Favorites. There'll be multiple categories. I'll give you one category at a time, and you'll give me your favorite thing in that category. Let's start with food. What's your favorite food?
Hamburger.
Your favorite movie?
Ooh, Gone with the Wind.
Favorite book?
Oh, I just read a wonderful book. It may not be my favorite, but Liz Cheney's latest book about the January 6th hearings. It was very, very fascinating. So I enjoyed that very much, and it's very recent.
Very nice. I'm going to take you back to high school. What was your favorite subject in high school?
Oh, government, of course.
Wow. How about your favorite subject in college?
Political science.
All right. Your favorite holiday?
Oh, well, you know, I'm Jewish, but I love the winter holidays. Christmas, of course, I celebrate Hanukkah, but I just love the feeling during Christmas and everybody's happy and shopping and spending time with family. And so that's probably my favorite time of year, my
Awesome.
favorite holiday.
Very good. Your favorite sports team?
The Golden Knights,
All right,
of course.
very good. So the second segment is called Tough Choices. I'm going to give you two choices, and you're going to hopefully pick one.
Okay.
You ready? Clemson Tigers or South Carolina Gamecocks?
Oh, Clemson.
Yeah, we did our research. We knew that was going to be tough.
Oh, it is.
Aces game at Mandalay Bay or Raiders game at Allegiant Stadium?
Oh, you're killing me.
I know.
Oh,
It's
my
tough.
God.
You can say both.
You know, I got to say both.
All right.
I love going to the Allegiant and watching the Raiders. They're great. But the Aces, I'm really proud of,
Yes.
you know. So that's both are great
Both.
for the city.
Very good. Now, when you're having your dinners, red or white wine?
White.
Would you rather cook at home or eat at a restaurant?
Eat at a restaurant.
Now, vacations or staycations?
Oh boy. You know, I've done staycations a lot because, you know, when the kids were young, if we wanted to get away for a night. So I love all of my staycations, but now I kind of like to get away.
Yeah.
So I would say vacation at this point in my life.
And when you want to get away, would you rather drive to your vacation spot or fly there?
Depends on where we're going. If it's California, we'll drive. If it's further, we'll probably fly.
All right. And when you get there, do you prefer a hotel or an Airbnb?
Oh, hotel. I like that room service.
And would you rather owe money or owe a favor?
Ooh, I guess owe a favor because I could pay it back easier.
There you go. And this is a hard one. Justice or grace?
Both.
All right.
Both.
Actions or words?
Actions.
All right. You made it through the segment called Tough Choices. Good job. The last one is called Finish the Sentence. I'm going to give you about 95% of the sentence. You're going to finish it for me. You ready? If Shelley could live anywhere, it would be
Las Vegas.
the best part of living in Southern Nevada is
Having my family here.
Shelley's favorite thing about her current job is
I'm unemployed. That's my favorite thing.
If Shelley could travel back in time, she would travel to
You mean back, way, way back?
yeah, wherever you want in time.
Oh my golly. I think I like where I am now. This is where I was supposed to be.
Very
so
good.
21st century.
All right. 3 words that describe Shelley are
Hardworking, dedicated, honest.
couldn't agree more. Very good.
Thank you.
And doing the WC podcast here with us today was
A pleasure.
well, thank you, Shelley, for staying over and doing the bonus segment.
Thank you so much.